I declared this session open. Welcome to the 7th meeting of the House of Commons Special Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic.
That today's proceedings will be televised in the same way as a typical sitting of the House.
We will now proceed to ministerial announcements.
No ministerial announcements. It's confirmed. And we'll go on to presenting petitions.
We will now proceed to presenting petitions for a period of not exceeding 15 minutes. I would like to remind members that any petition presented during a meeting of the special committee must have already been certified by the clerk of petitions. Once a member has presented their petition, we ask that they please come and drop it off at the table. So the first petition, the honourable member, Mr. Manley.
Speaker, I rise today to present a petition that's got many signatures on it from constituents in Nanaimo Ladysmith, and they're calling for a ban on cosmetic testing using animals, and they want us to follow the European Union model where they've banned the use of animals in cosmetic testing. So they're calling for the ban the sale or manufacture of animal-tested cosmetics and their ingredients in Canada moving forward. Thank you.
Presenting petitions. Mr. Poliev.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to table petition E2466, initiated by a constituent of mine in Stittsville, a beautiful West Ottawa community. The petition has collected 827 signatures from every province and territory. It was collected by Kara, a mother from my riding who suffered an unthinkable tragedy. Her 11-year-old son Joshua drowned in a boating accident on the St. Lawrence River at Rockport, Ontario. Joshua, her son, was not wearing a life jacket, and worse, Kara's family had to wait 48 days to recover Joshua's body. Kara is now working tirelessly to amend the small vessel regulations to make it mandatory for children under the age of 14 to wear a life jacket or PFD, while passengers in or drivers of small vessels covered under parts 2, 3, and 4 of the regulation are there. I support Kara's efforts, and I'm honored to table this petition on her behalf.
Presenting petitions. Présentation de pétitions.
Presenting petitions.
Seeing none, we'll continue. We'll now proceed to the questioning of ministers. Veuillez noter que...
Please note that we will suspend deliberations every 45 minutes to allow employees that provide technical support to the House to change places safely. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Scheer.
Monsieur le Président, hier...
Chair, yesterday it was revealed that our government has ignored fraud. They tried to act like everything was normal. We learned that more presumed cases of fraud were noted when benefits were requested, and the Prime Minister has said we'll deal with this in the future. There will be billions of dollars that will be taken by frauders. Will the Prime Minister protect taxpayers and immediately act to deal with these 2,000 presumed cases of fraud? Answer. Our priority was getting money to all Canadians who are in need in a quick way, and that's exactly what we've done. Millions of Canadians received the money they needed so dearly. I want to be very clear. Fraud is unacceptable, and we do have measures in place to detect tax cheats, and they will be forced to pay this money back to the government, and we'll ensure that will be done in the future.
Conservatives agree that those who need help should get it, and no one is arguing that they shouldn't. But reports indicate that the Liberals have ordered public servants to turn a blind eye to 200,000 cases of suspected fraud. So, simple question, yes or no, did the government instruct any government department to ignore red flags or warnings of fraudulent cases? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the priority in this situation was getting money out to the millions of Canadians who needed it as quickly as possible. But of course, fraud is unacceptable. That's why we have put safeguards in place to ensure that anyone who received that money fraudulently will have to repay it.
Mr. Scheer.
Yes or no question, Mr. Speaker. Did the government give any kind of instruction to public servants in any department to ignore red flags or warnings of fraudulent cases? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Instruction to government officials was to get money out to those who needed it as quickly as possible. We have put measures in place to detect fraud. People who got this money fraudulently will have to repay.
Scheer.
There you can't answer a yes or no question, so we can all assume what the answer must be. In other situations, the government is saying no to people. They are letting so many Canadians down. Small business owners who don't happen to have a CRA payroll number or a business account are ineligible for the government supports. Individuals, owner-operators, those who are earning $1 more than $1,000 are being told that they don't qualify for the emergency response benefit. Meanwhile, fraudsters are getting theirs. Does the Prime Minister think it's fair to tell people who are following all the rules no, while telling government officials to allow fraudulent cases to be processed?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians well know this is an unprecedented situation in which we had to get help to as many Canadians as possible, as quickly as possible. That is exactly what we did. We continue to work very hard to fill gaps of people who should get money who haven't been able to. And like I said, we have strong measures to counter fraud. Anyone who got this money fraudulently will have to repay it.
Mr. Scheer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, when these programs were first designed, the Prime Minister said that he acknowledged that there were problems. They would be fixed later. Well, here we are in May, and hundreds of thousands of Canadians are being told no for purely technical and bureaucratic reasons. Will the Prime Minister make these simple changes, allowing business owners who don't happen to have a business bank account, who don't happen to have a CRA payroll number, and individuals who are ineligible for the emergency response benefit because they've been paid by family members through dividends? Will he finally make these changes, or is he going to continue letting hundreds of thousands of Canadians down during this pandemic?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, from the beginning of this pandemic, we moved extremely rapidly to get help and support to millions of Canadians. That was the priority, and that's what we've been doing for the past 2 months. As we've said, we will continue to tweak and improve to make sure that more people who need it are getting it. We are working as best we can, as fast as we can, to help those millions of Canadians who need support.
We've got time for about a 15-second question if the Honourable Mr. Scheer would like to...
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated that he would support Taiwan's inclusion in the WHO only as a non-state observer. Of course, that designation does not exist. Participants of the WHO are either states or NGOs. Will the Prime Minister support Taiwan's participation as a state observer?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister in 15 seconds or less, please.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue with our Recognize One China policy, but we have always advocated for Taiwan's meaningful inclusion in international bodies where it makes sense to do so. That includes at the WHO.
We're now going to continue with Mr. Blanchet. Thank you very much, Chair. Friday, students in Quebec and Canada will be able to make a request for the CURB for students, and that's good news. This was a necessary program because the number of students that won't be able to get their summer job they had last year back is much higher than the number of jobs that could be available for these people. And we don't know how long these jobs will not be available for. There are people who said that there's a risk about in terms of meeting the job market needs, and the Prime Minister made a clear commitment to create incentives for students to work. Between now and Friday, because we need to know what the commitment is, will there be job incentives that will accompany the CURB? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his understanding of this question and to understand how important it is to support students who won't be able, for the most part, to be able to have a summer job to count on. But we know that students don't just want money, they want work experience. And that is why we're establishing programs such as Canada Summer Jobs and other programs to create 70,000 key jobs in important sectors so that they can also get jobs. We're going to continue to work with young people and with employers to ensure that we can fill the gaps in the job market and ensure that young people are properly supported. Mr. Blanchette, that's quite interesting, but that doesn't answer my question at all. People in the fishing industry, tourism, agriculture, and in general, they've expressed fears that people, if they take a job, they'll lose their benefit or they won't work at all. And the more you earn at your job, the less you'll get. But we think that after you earn your $1,000, that should be kept. There should be, well, since you made a commitment 2 weeks ago, can you look at incentives right now? This emergency won't last 8 months. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Chair, young people need money, but they also need job experience. We're in an unprecedented situation. That's why we're working with seasonal industries in various regions to ensure that we do have enough labor available and to help them. Students can do their share. At the same time, we have to ensure that they do have the necessary support for all those who won't be able to find jobs. And that's why we're continuing to work with the industries in question to ensure that we do have labor available and also support students. Mr. Blanchette, unfortunately, the whole spirit of this question doesn't seem to be have understood. In the best possible scenario, I doubt that the government can bring back all the jobs that it would be necessary for students to take on. There'll be some missing, first. Second, people aren't crazy. People will say, if I earn less by going to work than staying at home, no goodwill will help solve this issue. Can we ensure that the more someone will work, the more money they'll get? I think we need a clear response given the deadlines in question and the fact that the people are going to sign up for the program Friday. Principles are nice, but we need a clear answer on this. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As of Friday, students will be able to apply for the emergency benefit for them. And when they apply, they will also be directed to a job bank that we established to ensure that they know what available jobs there are. And they'll know how they'll be able to get money they need, but also the necessary professional experience that they'll need for their future, and while helping our society in this. I know that we'll be able to count on them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the most devastating outcomes of this COVID-19 crisis has been the impact on seniors. 80% or more of the deaths during COVID-19 have been seniors living in long-term care homes. The military had to be called in. Out of 14 countries, Canada has been deemed the worst in its care of seniors. Despite all of this, the Prime Minister has said recently that he doesn't feel it's the federal government's responsibility to find a solution. How can he say that to families reeling with the loss, that it's not the federal government's responsibility to play a role in solving this problem?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps the fact that the NDP no longer has many seats in Quebec has caused it to forget the importance of respecting the Constitution and the areas of jurisdiction of provincial versus federal governments. We will be there to work with the provinces as they deal with challenges in their long-term care facilities. We are there as a partner, but we on this side of the House will always respect the jurisdiction of the provinces and be there to support them in fulfilling those responsibilities.
Everyone across Canada has just heard this Prime Minister double down on the idea that he doesn't feel it's his responsibility, despite the fact that the Canadian military had to go into long-term care homes. There is a role that the federal government can play. The federal government, both Liberal and Conservative, have been consistently for decades cutting transfers to healthcare. They can increase those transfers to ensure that long-term care is adequately funded. We can also ensure that there's a national care guarantee, working with provinces to ensure that we are meeting the best standards. We can increase workers' pay. We can ensure that there's no more profiting off the back of seniors when it comes to long-term care. Will the Prime Minister commit to some of these care guarantees?
You right, Honourable Prime Minister.
It will come as exactly no surprise to the vast majority of Canadians that the Liberal Party will always stand up for the Constitution of Canada. We respect the Constitution, we respect areas of provincial jurisdiction, but as I have said from the very beginning of this crisis, we will be there to help the provinces as they manage the challenges that they're facing. The federal government does have a role to play, and it is a role to support the provinces in doing the things they need to do during this unprecedented time. We will continue to be there.
The Prime Minister is no longer trying to hide behind jurisdiction. We know that in long-term care homes, the for-profit long-term care homes have been the site of the worst conditions, where the most number of seniors have died. Will the Prime Minister join us in committing to removing profit from the long-term care system, that vulnerable seniors should not be the subject to the profits of a company willing to cut services, staffing, and quality of care, and instead ensure that seniors get the best care possible?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think it has become clear for all Canadians that we need to improve the care offered to our seniors right across the country. That is something that we cannot look at these numbers that we're seeing and these tragedies hitting so many families and not want to see, as a country, us do better. And that's why we, of course, recognize we're going to work with other orders of government, particularly the provinces in whose jurisdiction this is primarily, to support answering these questions for the long term, how we improve the way Canada supports our elders. This is something really important that we will be there for.
Mr. Singh.
Au CHSLD.
In long-term care homes in Dorval, 31 seniors deceased in 1 month. They were left without food, they were dehydrated, and did not receive care. And those who presented symptoms of COVID-19 were not isolated from others. They spent $3,000 to $10,000 a month to have their elderly in this center. How come the Prime Minister can think that there is no role for the federal government to play to solve this devastating issue? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Chair. All Quebecers and Canadians were shocked to see the tragedy in the Dorval long-term care home. And as a citizen, I was so happy when Quebec took firm action and asked a lot of questions about this issue, and we are going to be there to support Quebec in its search for answers and, most importantly, to move forward in the long term to better support our seniors right across our country. We're going to continue now with Mr. Poilievre.
How many emergency response benefit checks have been sent to people whose applications have been flagged as fraudulent?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to rapidly remind people that roughly 7.7 million Canadians received the CERB. Mr. Poilievre.
Response benefits have been sent out to people whose applications have been flagged as fraudulent.
L'Honourable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I understand that the pace just allows us to give it a little trickle of information at a time, but Mr. Poilievre.
How many?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister, we're working very hard on this.
Monsieur Poilievre.
How many?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Honourable Minister, to guarantee the integrity of our system, we are going to provide support for Canadians.
Response benefit checks have been sent to people whose applications have been flagged as fraudulent.
Monsieur le Ministre.
7.7 million Canadians received the CERB, and we are ensuring the integrity of our system.
He's now claiming that all 7.7 million? That's crazy. His department is reported to have given out, the department is reported to have given out 200,000. So is the number 200,000 the correct number of checks that have been sent out to people whose applications have been red flagged as fraudulent? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister, thank you. I'm happy to benefit from this opportunity to provide the following details. First, 7.7 million Canadians received at least one payment. And Mr. Poilievre, how many prisoners received their emergency benefit check? The Honourable Minister, if I may, to go further, I'd like to thank the member for his question. 7.7 million Canadians received emergency benefit. Mr. Poilievre.
7 million Canadians are in jail? The question was, how many prisoners have received the benefit check?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Honourable Minister, listen, we can make jokes about what's happening to Canadian, but many of them are suffering with this crisis. Mr. Poilievre.
CBC is saying that prisoners are receiving the check. They can't have lost their job. They were already in prison. Simple question. How many prisoners have received the checks?
The Honourable Minister. Chair, I'd like to remind members in this House that we're talking about a very serious situation, and some people are unable to make ends meet. These are emergency measures. Mr. Poilievre. We're doing the work that Canadians expect us to do.
Have received the checks.
The Honourable Minister. Chair, I've already explained to the member and I'm happy to remind him once again that this benefit is an emergency one. Mr. Poilievre.
The Auditor General says that he's dropping half of his audits because the government refuses to provide him funding. The government has enough money to send 200,000 fraudulent applicants emergency checks. Why won't the government give the Auditor General the funding he requests?
The Honourable Minister. I'd like to thank the member for his question, and I'd like to talk about the role that institutions play in this emergency situation, including the role of the Auditor General. And we're going to continue to support him because he allows us to do things properly. Mr. Poilievre.
What does the Auditor General have to do to get the money to do his audits? Does he have to file a bunch of fraudulent applications for an emergency response benefit?
I just want to remind the honourable members to place their questions through the chair, not directly to the members, and answer directly. The
Honourable Minister. Chair, I know the member, and I know that he doesn't want to give the impression that the Auditor General has to be fraudulent to correctly do his job. Mr. Poilievre.
That's why he should get the money he needs to do his job. He was doing twice as many audits under the previous government than he is now, but doesn't have the money to do the audits he needs to keep an eye on this government's extraordinary spending. So yes or no, will the government give the Auditor General the funding he has requested so that he can get back to doing the same number of audits he did under the much more robust funding of the previous Harper government?
Cut funding to the Auditor General and cause them to lay off dozens of employees. We increased the funding for the Auditor General. We recognize the important work they need to do. That's why we increased the funding for the Auditor General, while the members opposite party cut funding for the Auditor General.
I appreciate the help from some of the members keeping time, but I do have my own chronograph here, so I'll take care of it from this end. But I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Now we're going to continue with Mr. Deltel. Thank you very much, Chair. I agree entirely with the President of the Treasury Board. We're not here to make jokes. We're here to tell Canadians the truth. Yesterday, the National Post said that 200,000 people were sent checks fraudulently. Yes or no? The Honourable Minister, I'd like to thank the member because just a few minutes ago, I reminded people in my riding in the Greater Quebec region who received the emergency benefit. They didn't receive it because they were frauders, but because they really needed it. My question is about the tax cheats. I know there aren't a lot in Quebec, but the question is simple. Yes or no? Were there 200,000 cheats who were sent checks? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister. What I also explained, Chair, and I would like to, as my colleague already knows, that right from the outset, we announced solid mechanisms to establish this quickly to ensure that this benefit reflects the integrity of the system. If you want to show integrity, you have to tell Canadians the truth. Yesterday, the National Post reported that there were 200,000 cheats. Yes or no? To say the truth, the Minister of Revenue clearly said that there will be no tolerance for fraud in the system. All mechanisms will be established to ensure that, Mr. Deltel, we want to ensure that the system is quick and rigorous. He may be one of the rare Canadians who thought that Ms. Leboutier was clear yesterday. Yesterday, a member asked a very clear question to the Minister of Revenue, and she was unable to answer it. Someone who goes back to work this week and who received the CERB, $2,000, what do? Do they have to pay back the amount they're not entitled to? Do they have to keep the $2,000 for themselves? Or should they wait till their tax return comes in next year? What should they do? The Honourable Minister. I'd like to thank the member for his question, which is quite relevant. What should this person do? They should contact Service Canada or the CRA based on how they receive their benefit. They have to ensure that what their current circumstances are and take the appropriate decision and action.
Well, the boss is right here in the chamber. It's all well and good for average Canadians to call the CRA, but we have the president of the Treasury Board right here. So why doesn't he say what people are supposed to do with that benefit? Are they supposed to keep it, or are they supposed to wait for tax time? A clear answer, please. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recognize and value the importance of emphasizing the need for clarity. Everyone has to act in accordance with their own circumstances, and the important thing to do is to work with officials from Service Canada or CRA. Mr. Deltel. Canadians need a clear answer from the bosses, and the boss is right here, the President of the Treasury Board. Can the President of the Treasury Board clearly tell officials who will deal with Canadians what they are to do with someone who's getting the CERB but returning to work? These are honest people. They're not tax cheats. They want to know what the rules are, and they want to do the right thing. Can the President of the Treasury Board give a clear explanation? The Honourable Minister. Well, this is extraordinary because my colleague stressed two important words: hardworking Canadians and honesty and clarity. These are important things. Officials know what they have to do, and they've been doing an exemplary job since the beginning of the crisis. Mr. Deltel. Yes, these are great officials, and I often give them a shout out, but they haven't been given any clear instructions from their boss. Mr. Speaker, I come back to the basic question. The National Post says there are 200,000 Canadians who have fraudulently used emergency benefits. That's $1.6 billion. Is that true or not? The Minister. I'm sure the member is not questioning the ability of CRA officials to follow clear instructions, and their instructions were to ensure that the integrity of the system be protected in these exceptional circumstances.
Ms. Gray.
Mr. Speaker, last week British Columbia unveiled its plan to begin reopening its economy. I've been speaking with many business owners and business associations in my riding, and I'm hearing that they're not getting their orders for cleaning supplies. Some businesses have said their back orders go to March. They do not know how they can possibly reopen if they are not meeting health cleaning standards or accessing PPEs for their employees and customers. They are well aware of the issues arising from this government's reliance on Chinese manufacturing rather than building capacity here. What is this government doing to address these issues and ensure wholesale supply companies get products now so they can distribute to businesses they need?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government is rapidly buying aggressively buying life-saving equipment that Canada needs from a diverse range of suppliers. We are building up domestic capacity as well as procuring internationally. In terms of our priority, it is to make sure that frontline healthcare workers have the support they need. And in terms of other areas of the economy, we are working with our federal and provincial counterparts to make sure that we can do so in collaboration with them.
Ms. Gray.
Mr. Speaker, an ongoing concern I've heard from small business owners is that they are ineligible for CEBA due to not having a business account. When I brought up this point to Small Business Minister Ng at committee, she said it was the first time that she had heard of this issue and that she would follow up. I asked this question on April 23rd, and it's now been almost 3 weeks. Small business has been let down. Can this government confirm that they're going to fix this issue?
The Honourable Minister.
Chair, I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question. This is really important that this program that we've established helps small businesses. We've shown in the past that we're very flexible and nimble in accommodating the needs of businesses. I want to assure the member opposite that we are looking into this matter and will come forward with a resolution in a timely manner.
Ms. Gray.
Mr. Speaker, I just read another email from a small business owner this morning who has been let down by this government. He chose to pay off debts instead of paying himself a wage. Therefore, he is ineligible for CEBA for that loan. Owner-operators not paying themselves a payroll has eliminated them from participating in government programs and shows a true lack of understanding for small businesses and especially owner-operators. Will this government commit to fixing this issue?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, I want to thank the honourable member for her question. Particularly when it comes to small businesses, this is an area that we focused in on to make sure that they have the appropriate support that they need. With regards to the program that she highlighted, we've shown flexibility in the eligibility criteria of making sure that individual companies that want to apply for this loan, the threshold is now being decreased to $20,000 for the payroll versus $50,000, and the upper limit's gone to $1.5 million versus $1 million. And we'll continue to make sure we bring forward the changes necessary to have more businesses.
Go on to Ms. Gray, please.
Okay. This government has left Canadian craft breweries hanging out to dry, like the hops in their beer. On April 24th, the Canadian Craft Brewers Association released a report on the effects of COVID-19 on the Canadian craft brewing industry. The report states 38% of craft brewers did not qualify for the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy in March, and 53% were either not sure or predicted that they would not qualify in April. Many are brew pubs like BNA and my riding, and due to higher payroll are also not applicable for the CEBA loan. They have been left out and left down. 5% of these breweries have already closed permanently, and others are on the verge of doing so, and a portion have stepped up making PPEs. Will this government take initiative to support this industry by amending program requirements?
The Honourable Minister.
To thank the honourable member for her question. When it comes to the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, we again there have demonstrated flexibility and nimbleness. The program requirement changes revenue threshold. We originally had 30% for the month of March. We changed that to 15%, and the eligibility criteria was to compare it to the first 2 months of this year, also compared to the previous year as well. We're going to continue to make changes to make sure more businesses can access this program.
Ms. Gray, you have 33 seconds.
In my constituency, Okanagan fruit production is a huge industry, and many apple orchardists have brought concerns to me of high costs, apple prices from last season selling below cost, CUSMA agreement not helping the industry, and low-priced Washington apples flooding our market. COVID-19 has just exacerbated their dire financial situation, and the BC fruit growers have called on the government to government's announcement saying that agriculture measures were underwhelming. I questioned Minister Bibeau in the House a couple of months ago at the time, and she did not have an answer. What is the plan to help our orchardists?
The Honourable Minister, in 10 seconds or less.
Thank you. Since the outset of this crisis, we have been helping business people in all industries. We started with small and medium size, eventually moved on to big business, and have gone industry by industry as well.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In my riding of Foothills, we've established a Foothills Business Recovery Task Force, and we have surveyed hundreds of small business owners about the effectiveness of the emergency programs put forward by the government. The results of that were quite alarming. More than half of those respondents have not qualified for any of the programs, and more than the vast majority have said their businesses will not last more than another month. Will the government expand the eligibility for some of these programs, including sole proprietors, or are they still looking at refunding the GST paid by some of these businesses over the last year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I do want to highlight the fact that we've issued 590,000 loans through the CEBA account. So this demonstrates that this particular program is working, that businesses are taking advantage of this, and we recognize that we want to be more generous and more thoughtful about these programs. We've demonstrated flexibility in the past and will continue to be nimble going forward.
Mr. Barlow.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Charlebois said that we are on the precipice of losing 15% of our farms. 30,000 farm families are at risk of bankruptcy. This will have a devastating effect on our rural economies. Does the minister know the impact of losing 30,000 family farms will have on our food security and the price of groceries on the store shelves?
The
Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture and agri-food is extremely important. We've said that clearly. It's an essential service, and that's why there are risk management programs that are already well established. We are willing to do more. Those programs are already quite generous, but we've invested $2.6 billion.
Mr. Speaker, from every single stakeholder, they are not applying for these business risk management, and they are not working for the producers. There is a bottleneck right now in our processing capacity. And when the minister re-announced the agri-recovery program, there was funds set aside for cattle and pork producers. When is that money going to be available, and how long will it last?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're talking about two different programs here. There's the processing fund, $75 million in new money. The other money is for pork and beef. It comes from the agri-recovery program. And once again, that's new money. $15 million came out of that in the past.
Mr. Speaker, it is not new money. It's been budgeted year after year and is budgeted again next year. The cattlemen said that the set-aside funds that the minister is talking about are already gone, did not last even 2 weeks. Is this government's food policy to rely on food imported from foreign countries to feed Canadian families if they do not assist Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The fund to help beef producers will have, the criteria will be released in the coming days. We're working as effectively as possible and efficiently as possible to deploy this program and get the money to beef and pork producers.
Producers across this country have said an exemption from the carbon tax would help them greatly during this pandemic. When I asked the minister about any data that was available for the impact the carbon tax had on agriculture, the answer I got with that information was secret. Yesterday at committee, the minister said that was a mistake, that information has been public. We looked everywhere last night, my staff and I, and journalists, and that information could not be found. Is that information actually available?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, that information is available publicly, and I'd be happy to give that information to my colleague.
Well, if that data is available, then the minister must know that the financial impacts of the carbon tax has on Canadian farmers. So does the minister, with the information that she apparently has, does she agree with the Prime Minister that Canadian farmers are much better off financially by paying the carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister.
Organizations, analysts add different assumptions, methodologies, and geographic areas, so the results give a broad range of estimated impacts. According to the organization that have provided information in 2019, the estimated impacts of a $20 per ton price on pollution due to grain drying range.
Go back to Mr. Barlow. You have 30 seconds, please. A 15-second.
Does the minister agree with the Prime Minister that farmers are financially better off paying the carbon tax?
Mr. Speaker, the price on pollution is extremely important for our economy in general and for our transition to a greener economy. We've already provided the agricultural industry with various supports through gasoline, greenhouses, etc.
Will the government fully fund the Office of the Auditor General?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer is we have done that in 2018 and 2019, and the Prime Minister, I'll say more.
Mr. Kelly.
Speaker, the Minister, I hope, would not want to mislead the House. The office is certainly not fully funded, as per the testimony we heard yesterday at the Finance Committee. This government has expanded the Auditor General's responsibilities without adequate resources. When will they fully fund the Auditor General?
The Honourable Minister.
So going on with my answer, and as the Prime Minister said just a moment ago, that has led to the hiring of 38 new staff members. So that's great to hear because they're doing even better than they used to do before we came into power.
Mr. Kelly.
No previous Auditor General in Canadian history has ever had to tell a parliamentary committee that they had insufficient funds to do their job. That is what, in fact, this Auditor General has done. When will the government fully fund the Office of the Auditor General?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I'm glad to be again given the ability to say that how important the work of the Auditor General is. We believe very much in that role. That's why we have increased the funding that was necessary for it to be doing its important job, and we'll keep working hard with the Auditor General.
Michael Ferguson sadly passed away in 2018, yet the government has refused to name a permanent replacement. Why?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is another wonderful opportunity to remind all members of this House of the importance of these institutions. And when we face these tragic deaths, we, of course, are very sad of the passing of the people, and we work.
Yesterday, the Parliamentary Budget Officer said Canada's debt could reach $1 trillion this year. What will it cost to service $1 trillion debt?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we remain committed to doing, as we've said, whatever it takes to support Canadians through this challenging time. We think this is extremely important and will continue to focus on Canadians' well-being.
Mr. Kelly.
What is the estimated annual debt servicing cost of the aid measures announced so far?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there will be opportunity for us to give a full outline of the costs and benefits of our measures, and we will do that when we have the ability to have.
Mr. Kelly.
Here is Canada's AAA credit rating.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada came into this crisis with a very strong fiscal position, and of course we will experience challenges as we move forward, but we believe that we should experience those challenges as we support Canadians.
Mr. Kelly.
The effect of a downgrade be on Canada's debt servicing costs?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to focus on how we can support Canadians, support Canadian businesses as we get through this challenge.
Mr. Kelly.
How many private sector loans have funded for small and medium-sized businesses under the Business Credit Availability Program?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the information on the Business Credit Availability Program comes available, we are being fully transparent with the Finance Committee and with this House.
Mr. Kelly.
Does the Minister know how many loans have funded under that program?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not in the habit of memorizing every single number available to us, but what I can confirm is that we will be transparent with this House on the numbers as they become available.
Mr. Kelly.
Does the Minister know the dollar amount or the approximate dollar amount so far lent and guaranteed by the business or by the Export Development Corp?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one number that would probably be helpful for people to understand is we've had now over 550,000 approved loans under the CEBA program, representing over $20 billion worth of money that's actually.
Mr. Kelly.
Will the government fix the CEBA program to include businesses that pay owner-operators through dividends?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think the language "fix" is incorrect when more than 500,000 businesses have received this loan, but of course we're always endeavouring to make sure it works for as many businesses as possible.
Mr. Kelly.
Fix CEBA to cover small businesses that hire day labourers or subcontractors.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, we've demonstrated flexibility and nimbleness when it comes to this program. We changed the eligibility criteria to make sure more businesses can apply and be eligible for this program, and we'll endeavour to make sure that more Canadians have access to this program, particularly those small businesses in rural and remote communities.
Mr. Kelly.
Fix CEBA to cover business owners that use personal instead of business checking accounts to operate their business.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, I want to highlight the fact that this has been a very positive program and well received by many small businesses. Over 590,000 small business loans have been issued, and that's a testament to the design of the program, and we're going to make sure we continue to engage with small businesses.
Okay, we'll now go on. The next question goes to Mr. Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, last week, Friday, Statistics Canada was to release labour force survey data at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. One of the most important and market-moving indicators of the month, but someone in this government leaked that information ahead of time, almost 45 minutes ahead of time, and exclusively to Bloomberg terminal users on Wall Street and on Bay Street that pay thousands of dollars for those terminals a month. Moving markets, the Canadian dollar moved 8 basis points in that short period of time, and billions were made or lost on the market. Section 34 of the Statistics Act make it a criminal offence for someone to leak information that might influence stock or bond or currency markets. Has the government notified the RCMP about what appears to be a criminal breach of the Statistics Act?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. I too share the same concerns that he's highlighted with regards to this leak. This is completely unacceptable. That is why we're going to make sure there's a proper and thorough examination done, and going forward we want to make sure that no such breach or no such leak occurs.
Mr. Chong.
Statistics Canada said that no earlier than 2 p.m. the previous day that staffers and ministers' offices, including the Prime Minister's office, Finance office, the Employment Minister's office, and the Industry Minister's office would have received this secret information. Statistics Canada has also indicated that it's begun an internal investigation. Will the minister commit to fully cooperating with this investigation?
The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to remind the honourable colleague that our government has supported Statistics Canada. We're the ones that reintroduced the mandatory long-form census. We're the ones that funded more money for Statistics Canada. And any such investigation, any leak, the member opposite knows will be fully cooperative.
Mr. Chong.
Will the minister commit to making the results of this investigation public?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite knows full well that there's proper processes and protocols in place when it comes to such sensitive matters, and we will ensure that those processes and protocols.
Mr. Chong.
Mr. Speaker, I hope there's not a double standard for ministers' offices and the public service, because it was only about 13 years ago that a public servant was criminally charged and convicted for using top-secret information in the markets. I hope that in this investigation and in the release of the information concerning this investigation, that ministers' staffers aren't held to a different standard than the public service has been held. Mr. Speaker, this leak speaks to the integrity of this government, and intelligence at the Five Eyes of our 4 other allies have been telling us for years that one of the top 2 or 3 threats that democracies are facing is declining public confidence in our key institutions. Democracies have been blindsided by misinformation, disinformation, and cyber attacks, and now we are being blindsided by the misuse of information by this very government. Now, that doesn't even, the government's own National Statistical Gathering Agency doesn't trust this cabinet or this government, and that's why they announced several days ago that they would suspend the pre-release of information to the cabinet. What is the government going to do to restore public confidence in our institutions?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government has remained steadfast in its support for Statistics Canada. I'd like to remind the honourable colleague, we are the government that brought forward legislation to strengthen the independence of Statistics Canada. We're the government that brought forward measures to make sure that they had additional monies for conducting the proper long-form, mandatory long-form census as well. And when it comes to the leak that the member opposite is talking about, we're not going to prejudge the outcome. We have been very clear that the proper processes and protocols that are in place will be followed.
We have time for a very brief question. Mr. Chong.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the government will call the RCMP and notify them about this, what appears to be a criminal breach of the Statistics Act, because it was a previous Liberal minister who himself was subject to a lot of misinformation and target of improper allegations about his office's use of information that leaked about the income trust changes that the previous Liberal government had brought. And the RCMP begun an investigation. In the course of the investigation, they charged, and ultimately a public servant was convicted of breaching that secret information. I hope that the minister holds his office and the offices of his cabinet colleagues to the same standard, calls in the RCMP, and makes them aware of what appears to be a criminal breach of the Statistics Act.
The Honourable Minister, in 30 seconds or less, please.
Sorry, how much time do I have, Chair?
We're over time, but I'm allowing 30 seconds so we can get a full.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Again, I want to take this opportunity to say that leaks of this nature are completely unacceptable. We have been very clear that we are going to take the appropriate steps. Statistics Canada is taking the appropriate steps. But I want to remind the member opposite, we're not going to prejudge any outcome at this stage. And again, it is our government that has been consistently supporting Statistics Canada in its work through the previous years.
Okay, thank you. Now, actually, we'll take a short break to allow our console operators to switch in a healthy way. While we're doing that, I'm just going to introduce something that I know it happens at the end of a question when there's less than a minute left, and the question goes over the half the time left over. I'll just indicate to the person asking the question that we've reached a limit so that the other side can answer with the same amount of time, so we have a fair playing field. Good. And we're ready to go again. L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. We're making progress, but unfortunately I'd like to hear it in French too. I'll address my question to the Prime Minister. On March 12th, I believe it was, the government announced about $1 billion worth of programs to deal with the early stages of the pandemic. And there was a transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars to Quebec. And since then, we're up to about $300 billion in federal emergency relief. The crisis is dragging on. We're not out of the woods. And given that context, I heard the Prime Minister say something earlier about respecting provincial and Quebec jurisdiction. Can we quickly agree to increasing health transfers to Quebec and the provinces, an ongoing increase without any conditions attached? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying.
To provinces and territories significantly since we first came into government in 2015. We continue to work with provinces and territories on a regular basis to make sure they're supported, not just in the outbreak of this pandemic, but in the increased costs overall to healthcare across the country. Our investments have included investments for mental health, for home care, and for the additional expenses that provinces and territories face as a result of an aging population. We'll continue to work with provinces and territories to ensure that those healthcare needs are met.
Mr. Blanchet, with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, that's hardly reassuring. The NDP leader wants the federal government to interfere heavily into provincial health jurisdiction, and the minister answers in English, and that's legitimate in a parliament, but her response was that no, the federal government fully respects provincial jurisdiction. So without wanting to interrupt the minister's reading, I'd like to hear the same thing in French as I'm hearing in English, that there will be full respect for provincial jurisdiction over health. It's an exclusive area. That would be music to my ears, the Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, and just as I respect the member opposite's right to speak in his first language, I hope that he understands that although I'm trying to learn our second official language in a high-pressure situation, it often creates anxiety. I will tell him, though, that we fully respect the jurisdiction of provinces and territories to address the needs of their constituents and their members, and we work very closely with Quebec and with all provinces and territories to make sure that the funds that we transfer from the federal government can be utilized in the way that best meets the needs of their constituents.
Mr. Blanchet. Well, let's not get into it, Mr. Speaker. I understand that French is the second official language. Well, you know what? It's my first official language. It's the first official language in Quebec. I would have liked to hear someone answer in French just for fun. I'd like to hear it from the Prime Minister because this is a constitutional issue. So I would have liked to hear from him in French. So I have a short, simple question. Is health an exclusive area of provincial jurisdiction? And in terms of managing this crisis? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to tell my colleague that there is no first and second official language. There are two equal official languages. The same respect is shown for both in this House and in government institutions. We're always happy to cooperate with the provinces and to respect their jurisdiction. Mr. Blanchet. Mr. Speaker, that's good to know that there's not a first and a second official language, that they're supposedly equal. So let's just continue along that in that vein. Is health an exclusive area of Quebec's and provinces' jurisdiction? The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we live in a federation where we work closely together with provinces and territories so that we can reach our mutually important goals. And that is that all citizens of Canada, all members of Canada have access to a public health care system that meets their needs. We continue to work within the constitutional
Monsieur Blanchet,
framework,
vous avez 21 secondes.
Mr. Blanchet, you have 21 seconds left. Well, the answer could be even shorter than the question. Is health care a matter of provincial jurisdiction? We need an increase that's unconditional in transfers. The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure the member would argue that it's important to work together. The federal government transfers money to the provinces, as he's well aware, to deliver health care, which is within each province and territory's jurisdiction to do so.
We will now continue with Ms. Gill.
Thank you. Today, as the member for Manicouagan, I would like to talk about a subject that is very important in my riding. It is 300,000 square meters, and our riding is next to the St. Lawrence River. There's also Gaspésie, the Magdalen Islands, and the lower St. Lawrence region. Their economies hinge on two key industries, namely tourism and fishing. These two industries, well, these aren't seasonal workers, but as our former leader, Gilles Duceppe, said, it is the industries themselves that are seasonal. And so what I have noted in terms of these industries is that there's no measure right now that really supports them, given their particular nature. These industries are cyclical, and they take place at a very set period of the year. We said that we're helping these seasonal workers and industries, but I'd like to know what is the specific assistance that has been adapted to these seasonal industries and these workers. The Honourable Minister, thank you very much. I would like to thank my colleague for her question. We know that the current situation is affecting the lives of Canadians from across our country, and it's having a major impact on small and medium-sized companies. Since the outset of this crisis, we've worked to establish quick and effective measures to support all Canadians. And that's what we're going to continue to do. We know that the tourism sector needs our support to get through this crisis as best possible. We're continuing to have discussions and to adapt our measures to help as many Canadians as possible. Madam Gill. Chair, with all due respect, what I'm hearing is that nothing has been done. Yes, there are measures that have been established, but nothing that is specific for these seasonal industries. That's what I'm hearing. So, of course, as a reminder, seasonal industries such as fishing, well, there was a fishing season that was delayed because of COVID-19, and for tourism, it's the same thing. Their season will be delayed. So companies in these sectors won't get a second chance. They won't be able to resume their activities in the fall. They won't be able to go back to fishing or tourism, so they need our help now. There are some proposals. For example, can the government think about offering a universal support for workers so that they can get through the next year and bring them to the next season? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank the member for talking about what's happening in our regions across Canada, and particularly in Quebec. We made considerable efforts to support the economic situation of these thousands of workers that are suffering right now. We've offered support for tourism, regional development, broader investment for wage subsidies and loans for small businesses that are prevalent in these ridings. And we're also ensuring that workers and companies in her riding can get through this crisis and will come out stronger and more united from it. Ms. Gill, this is take two. I've asked a question about specific assistance for seasonal workers, and what my honourable colleague has said doesn't relieve me. And it's not providing relief for this industry either. These workers won't have any money left. They won't be able to put food on the table. And will these workers have specific assistance adapted to them? And the same thing for the companies. Right now, I'm talking about my riding in eastern Quebec, but it affects all of Canada, both in terms of fishing and other. The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Chair. My colleague probably knows that the information I gave knows that this is true and that the CERB is available to all those who have lost their EI since December 2019. There was a strong number of requests that were made by many people in Canada and in Quebec in particular. Minister Singh.
The Prime Minister announced a business bailout, and in that proposal, he said that there would be limits on CEO bonuses and share buybacks. By saying limits, the Prime Minister is suggesting that there would be some amount of bonuses or share buybacks that could be paid for with public dollars. If that's the case, how much?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we believe it's very important that we support jobs, and in that regard, we're trying to make sure that businesses can get through this time. As we provide that support, we've been very clear for large enterprises that there will not be share buybacks allowed, period, and that there will, of course, be limitations on total compensation for senior executives in order to give Canadians confidence that we're doing the things that we need to do to support them, but not supporting executives.
We'll go on to Mr. Singh again.
Well, Germany has actually taken the lead and said if a company wants public money, then their executives must commit to reducing their pay. Will Canada follow Germany to ensure that public dollars go to workers, not to enrich the executive suite, and commit that no public money will go to bonuses or increasing salaries for executives?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are looking forward to releasing the complete details of the large employer emergency financing fund, and I think the member opposite will be quite pleased to see that we will be the leading on behalf of Canada in advance of what Germany is doing.
Mr. Singh.
Well, we know that the PBO has said that $25 billion at least are being lost to our revenues because corporations are avoiding paying their fair share. Now, will the Prime Minister commit today very clearly that if a company is hiding its money by putting it in an offshore tax haven, that company will not receive public help? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, again with this program, we want to be very clear that the support that goes to large businesses actually supports their Canadian enterprise and their Canadian employees. In that regard, we will not allow any company that's been convicted of tax evasion to get access to these funds, and we will carefully evaluate on an ongoing basis to make sure that companies remain eligible for this support based on their continuing investment in Canada.
Mr. Singh.
How many companies can the Minister of Finance name that have been convicted of tax evasion that would be denied help under this program? How many can he name?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think what's most important is that we focus on Canadians. Canadians that we're trying to support, whether they're working for small businesses or large businesses, so they can get through, supporting their family during this time, coming out with a job at the end of it. That is exactly where our focus lies in this regard.
Mr. Singh.
Speaker, not a single company. In fact, we are 4 years past the Panama Papers and not a single conviction. So this is simply fancy liberal words by saying that a company that has been convicted of tax evasion, there are simply no companies that this government can give it as an example. So I'm saying, why don't we follow what France has done and committed very clearly, not in liberal fancy words, but straight up. If a company is hiding its money by using offshore tax havens, it will not get public help. Will the minister commit to that right now?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, we've been working with France and other countries to actually make these rules stricter for businesses. So the process around the common reporting standard and the base erosion profit shifting has made it more difficult for firms to move money into tax havens, and it's ensured that we have transparency in seeing when they do so. So we'll continue to do that work. That's the hard work, to make sure that businesses abide by the rules and pay their appropriate part of taxes in our country.
Mr. Singh.
Let's talk about hard work. If a company is not convicted of tax evasion, but is putting its money in, for example, Barbados or Bermuda, specifically to avoid paying taxes, we've got a similar example that Loblaws did something like that. Will that company, despite not having a conviction, but clearly avoiding paying their fair share by putting their money in an offshore tax haven, would that company receive help, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd suggest that the member be very careful in accusing companies of wrongdoing. We have a country that respects international rules. We allow our companies to trade and to do business around the world. That continues to be important. That actually supports Canadian jobs. At the same time, what we're trying to do is make sure those international rules work, in fact, get tighter. That's what we've been working on. We'll continue to do that because we know that it's important that we can work internationally. It's important that companies pay their fair share here in Canada.
The next question goes to Mr. Hoback. Mr. Hoback.
Speaker, the Liberals' handpicked ambassador to China, Dominic Barton, stated that China's conduct during the pandemic is damaging to its own soft power. Yet, when asked if there should be an investigation into China's behavior during the crisis, the health minister stated, "That's not for me to say because I don't have all the evidence about what China did or didn't do." Why is Canada's ambassador to China criticizing China's actions during the pandemic while this Liberal government is defending it?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Let me thank the member opposite for the question and to say that Ambassador Barton is an excellent representative in Canada, of Canada in China, and he is a member of our government and very much shares and helps to formulate our government's policy when it comes to China. Ambassador Barton, of course, shares our government's view that a post-crisis review is absolutely necessary.
Mr. Hoback.
Mr. Speaker, the government's March 27th duty deferral announcement has caused tension within the trade community. Custom brokers are being asked to shoulder tremendous liability as importers are not required to make duty payments until the end of June. When there is a real possibility that some of these may find themselves insolvent, will the government commit to a liability exemption for custom brokers whose clients are unable to pay the duties at the end of June?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have worked hard to determine programs that we think can be supportive of individuals and businesses, including allowing for deferral of taxes through this period. And that we believe is important with respect to GST, which we've allowed to be deferred through until July 1st, and in terms of taxes for businesses through up until the end of August. We think this helps businesses to get through this challenging time, and we'll continue to support businesses and individuals so that we can have a strong economy when we get through this crisis.
Mr. Hoback.
Speaker, the following three questions are actually from constituents in my riding, so hopefully I'll get some good answers on them. First one I'll talk to is about Rick. He owns a small business in Melfort. Rick runs a small local bowling alley. It's a family-owned operation, so he doesn't meet the pay-hold thresholds for the wage subsidy benefit, nor does he qualify for any other announcement loans and grants. There are businesses right across Canada in similar situations. Is this minister suggesting that they lie to get the funds, or will they actually make some changes so that they actually do qualify?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for his question, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to highlight some of the initiatives that we have put forward to assist small businesses. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, this covers 75% of the wages for employees, so that way they can maintain their jobs. We've also put forward the Enhanced Work Sharing Program. It's an option to help businesses pay their employees. On top of that, I want to highlight the Canada Emergency Business Account, which has issued 590,000 loans. And as the Minister of Finance just recently mentioned, we deferred GST and HST and customs duty payments for businesses for the next 3 months.
Mr. Hoback.
Mr. Speaker, Robert actually owns a cleaning products company in Prince Albert, and he tells me that Canadian custodians and building service contractors are not purchasing Canadian-made products, disinfectants, because there are very few are included in the federal approval list for COVID-19. Even though Canada produces many products, Health Canada certified disinfectants, why is the Liberal government prioritizing the approval of Canadian-made products?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, that assertion is not correct. In fact, we've been working very closely with Canadian product producers as well as with our colleagues at Innovation, Science, Economic Development to make sure that Canadian companies have what they need to very quickly move through the approval process. In fact, Health Canada has accelerated this process, and most companies can get approved between 1 to 7 days. Of course, there's an iterative process that requires companies to work to ensure that the product is safe for use in Canada.
Mr. Speaker, last week the government announced $252 million in assistance for Canadian farmers, which is largely seen as an insult, especially given that a good amount of this money was already budgeted. My constituent Tracy from Melfort wrote to me asking me to advocate for farmers and ranchers so that they can get support they need to continue to produce our food. So I asked the government, when will they start prioritizing farmers and ranchers? Will they continue to reforming the business risk management program?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. We're working really hard with our provincial colleagues on the reform of the risk management program, but there is a new program for transformers and beef producers.
Mr. Speaker, provinces are reopening at different speeds, and that includes opening their provincial parks before the May long weekend. It no longer makes sense for fully staffed national parks across the country to be uniformly closed. Will the Minister of Environment commit to opening national parks in harmony with provincial and territorial parks across Canada?
Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are working very closely with our provincial partners on the reopening. I am pleased that we were able to publish on Tuesday, April 28th, shared guidelines supported by the Prime Minister and all of the premiers of provinces and territories on that reopening.
Mr. Culkins.
Mr. Speaker, boating is a safe way to enjoy the outdoors while maintaining physical distancing. Why is Parks Canada postponing the opening of lock operations and similar functions along our heritage waterways?
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, as I was saying in answer to the first question, the question of parks and of coordinating national provincial parks is a very good one. That's something that we're definitely working on.
Mr. Culkins.
Since the beginning of this pandemic, the minority Liberal government has been actively trying to push our democracy aside. They've severely limited parliamentary sittings, attempted to take executive control of tax rates, and use an order in council to ban lawfully acquired and responsibly owned firearms. When will the government stop using this pandemic as an excuse to run roughshod over our cherished democratic values?
The Honourable Minister.
Chair, I absolutely don't understand his question because we are here to answer questions for 2.5 hours, and we had the equivalent of 2 question periods, and that's almost over the week. It's 7 question periods more than usual.
Support for various sectors in our economy is baffling. There is more money made available to forcibly confiscate lawfully owned property than in emergency support for our hardworking farmers or our prosperity-creating oil and gas sector. The only consistent theme appears to be that sectors that don't traditionally vote Liberal are finding themselves left out in the cold. If that's not the case, then why is there such an obvious discrepancy?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister, thank you very much. That is absolutely unjustified to speak this way. We have been dedicated to our sectors, both to the energy sector and to the agricultural and agri-food sectors, which are particularly important and essential. And we are getting organized to improve the risk management program to include broader criteria and to help more producers.
During the misinformation briefing, the Public Safety Minister used Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom as examples for firearms policy. Does the Public Safety Minister realize that these countries are islands and none share a border with anyone, leastwise the United States of America? Is my bringing this newfound evidence to the Minister's attention going to change his focus to smugglers, gangs and criminals instead of wrongfully blaming lawful gun owners?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And through you, I'd like to assure the member that I've actually seen an atlas, but I also want to be very clear. Those countries like Canada have recognized that these weapons have no place in a civil society. They were designed for soldiers to engage in combat with other soldiers. They were designed not for hunting and sporting purposes, which is the lawful use of a firearm in Canada, but rather for individuals to kill other individuals. Tragically, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, that's precisely what they have been used for, and we have prohibited.
Mr. Culkins.
Mr. Speaker, the 9 o'clock gun is an iconic 12-pound cannon fired daily in Vancouver and Stanley Park since the 1800s. It's now a prohibited firearm as of May 1st, 2020. Can the minister advise the public of the safety risks that this Canada, which was manufactured in 1816, posed to the public?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I assume the member's office is referring to the prohibition of grenade launchers, which there are about 34 in Canada, and we have brought in regulation that now prohibit grenade launchers. It does not apply to some of the other things that have been suggested by the member opposite.
Mr. Culkins.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was referring to the iconic heritage 12-pound cannon that is mounted on a post in a pedestal in Stanley Park. It was manufactured in 1816. Mr. Speaker, any cannon that can be fired can be loaded with a projectile, and it meets the definition of a firearm, which means that every cannon in Canada, every heritage piece that might be in a museum, every heritage piece that might be in a collection is now a prohibited firearm. Was the minister not aware of this when he announced his policy?
Well, Minister.
Just to help, Mr. Speaker, just to help the member opposite, let us be very clear. We have prohibited weapons that were unfortunately widely available in Canada and were being used for purposes not for sport activity, which is the only use of a firearm in Canada for either hunting or target shooting sporting activities, but were rather being used to harm individual Canadians, and in some tragic cases, many individual Canadians. We've done the right thing, Mr. Speaker. And
we'll go on to Mr. Nader next. Mr. Nader.
Mr. Speaker, agricultural societies across rural Ontario are making the difficult decisions to cancel their fall fairs this year. Some of these fall fairs have been around since before Confederation. Mr. Speaker, not only is this a terrible loss for these communities of important community events, but it's also putting an important, significant financial strain on these agricultural societies. What action is the government taking to support agricultural societies in Canada?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question. What we've done is we've put forward monies to support our regional development agencies. These agencies have the mandate and the ability to support local initiatives, including the events that he has highlighted. This is more than doubling the budget that currently exists, so we have sufficient resources to support communities and these very important local events.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Speaker, the arts and culture industry has a massive impact on local economies. In my riding alone, we have the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, Stratford Festival, Drayton Entertainment, and the Stratford Summer Music. The postponement and the cancellation of the seasons of these important cultural institutions is having a massive impact on the hospitality industry, including local restaurants, hotels, bed and breakfasts. Mr. Speaker, so many of these businesses are small businesses and owner-operated businesses where they are falling through the cracks of the government's programs that have been introduced. How will the government address the blind spot in their programs for small businesses in communities like this, which rely on the tourism, arts and culture industry?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for his question. Clearly, we understand how important these organizations are to these communities. That is why we allocated $500 million to respond to the specific financial needs of arts, heritage, and sports organizations to help them be more resilient through this difficult time. And last week, we rolled out the funding of this announcement, and we look forward to engaging with communities across the country.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Speaker, 1.8 million jobs are attributed to the tourism industry in Canada. Among these, 740,000 of these jobs are related to international traveling. No one wants to see the borders open or reopen until it's safe to do so. But can the government provide clarity on what criteria will be used to provide some information to these tourism operators of how and when and under what criteria international borders will be reopened?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for his question, and above all, I would like to thank the member opposite for his view that we need to be cautious and prudent and put the health and safety of Canadians first. That is very much the view of our government as well. When it comes to international borders, the health and safety of Canadians is absolutely the first criteria we're going to look at. Of course, we will be looking at the situation with coronavirus.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Speaker, many Canadians continue to fall through the cracks of the programs announced by this government. One of my constituents only recently returned to the workforce after spending many years out of the workforce raising her children. As such, she doesn't qualify for the $5,000 minimum requirement for income during the past 12 months. How will the government address these people who are falling through the cracks?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are mindful of the very difficult circumstances in which many Canadians find themselves. We have put into place a number of different measures to help them, and we're going to continue to do so.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Speaker, it's been reported that as many as 15% of farmers and farm families in Canada could face bankruptcy and going out of business because of the massive impact that COVID-19 is having on agriculture in Canada. Business risk management programs are not working for these farm families, and the processing capacity is simply not there for farmers and for farm families, especially in the beef and the pork industry. How will the government immediately address the short-term processing capacity issues found for the beef and pork sectors, and when will they finally live up to the commitment of a complete review of business risk management programs?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am in discussions with my provincial counterparts to look at the range of risk management programs. The agri-stability program that we have offered to producers, well, we've extended the date of application until July, and they can quickly get an advance of 70% or more in provinces where that's possible. So before they say that the program's not working, I would ask them to use the calculator we have online and to look at how much they can receive.
Mr. Speaker, this government continues to show a blind spot for small businesses in Canada. So many don't qualify for the CEBA because they don't have a high enough payroll or they don't have a business account. Mr. Speaker, so many small businesses are falling through the cracks. Will they expand the criteria so that small businesses in my community and across Canada can qualify for the important assistance that they need at this time?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind the honourable colleague that we did expand the eligibility criteria threshold from 50,000 down to 20,000, so more businesses could be eligible. Also, the top end as well for salaries from $1 million to $1.5 million as well, and that is why we've seen 590,000 small business loans issued. That's a testament to the program. But we'll again.
The next question will go to Mr. Maguire. Mr. Maguire.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, hog and beef producers have seen drastic price drops. Producers are telling me that they would use the Western Livestock Price Insurance Program if the premiums were affordable, which they are not. So will the Minister of Agriculture work with the industry to make the premiums affordable so producers can have price protection against these market fluctuations?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. We're working closely with the industry and also with our provincial counterparts to see what the best possible programs would be to help producers right now during these tough times. And last week, we announced specific programs for the meat sector, several $1 million for producers, for processors, for both beef and pork producers.
Sirs.
Chez Angela Bakery in Brandon has seen tremendous success since it's opened 2 years ago. So due to this growth and the eligibility criteria for the wage subsidy program, their revenues would have to decline by much further than the 30% in order to receive help. So will the Minister of Finance amend the eligibility for the wage subsidy program so Chez Angela and similar businesses can apply?
Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for his question, and I just want to highlight the fact that we did make an amendment. When we originally proposed this initiative, the threshold was 30% for the month of March, and now businesses will only need to show 15% decline in revenue, and businesses will have the option between using January and February as a reference periods to show revenue losses or the same time as last year. This reflects again our ability to understand the needs of businesses, to act quickly, and to make sure that they benefit from this very important initiative.
Mr. McGuire.
They still don't qualify, Mr. Speaker. The Blarney Stone Restaurant in Clarny has repeatedly asked the Minister of Finance if they could refinance their loans through the Canada Small Business Finance Program. So will the Minister of Finance give small business owners the ability to refinance their existing loans through the program? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Science.
Again, we've demonstrated flexibility and nimbleness, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to these financing options. I'd also like to highlight another very important initiative that was mentioned earlier, the deferring of GST and HST and customs duty payments for businesses for the next 3 months. This will help 3.2 million business owners and entrepreneurs across the country. Again, another initiative to put more money in the pockets of businesses as they deal with this unprecedented healthcare crisis.
And back to Mr. McGuire.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals still haven't fixed the payroll eligibility program problems, for many small business owners who need to access the zero-interest loans available in CEBA. So can the minister provide any rationale on why countless of small businesses are not being allowed to access these loans?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as of today, 590,000 small business loans have been issued. I think that's contrary to the point that the member opposite is making. Clearly, we recognize we need to be agile and we need to understand the needs of businesses. That's why we made changes to this particular program, and we'll continue to listen to businesses. But I can assure the member opposite, 590,000 small business loans is no small feat.
The Honourable Member.
Some of the best competitive sport shooters in the world, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals' Order in Council on Firearms will put an end to many Canadians being able to represent our country. Can the Minister of Public Safety list even one of these sports shooting competitions that will now be illegal due to his Order in Council?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. An important question, because sports shooting is a very important tradition and for many Canadian sports shooters. But I want to assure the member opposite that the weapons that we have prohibited by this Order in Council were not designed for sports shooting, are not used in Olympics or Paralympic Games. They are not included in this and therefore has no impact on that activity of legitimate sports shooting.
Time for one more short question. Mr. McGuire.
Statistics show that women are more likely to live paycheck to paycheck, Mr. Speaker, and so women continue to be disproportionately impacted by this pandemic in a negative way. So many are worried that they won't have a job to go back to. Will the government commit to helping women who are bearing this financial burden return to the workforce?
La Ministre.
This, Mr. Speaker, is a very good question, and I would love to have a lot of time to answer it. And the answer is yes, of course. We are making sure that many of our measures impact disproportionately women, because when women succeed, all Canadians also succeed.
We will now proceed to Mr. Blanchet-Jonca from Témiscouata-les-Basques. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege for me to be here in the House today to represent the people of Rimouski, Neigette, Témiscouata-les-Basques, and as the tourism critic for the Bloc Québécois. Tourism is a major economic driver in Quebec. It's an industry that's vital for the regions in Quebec. Over $15 billion is spent in this industry. 1 in 10 jobs in Quebec is related to tourism. Every dollar spent in tourism generates about 70 cents in spin-offs. There are over 30,000 businesses, and 2/3 of those tourism companies are outside of Quebec City and Montreal. 82% of tourism businesses have less than 20 employees. That all shows how important it is to support tourism. I heard my colleagues say earlier that there was a plan for tourism. I'd like to hear more about that. What are the specific plans to support tourism? The Honourable Minister of Innovation and Science. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. He's right. The situation is very difficult for all regions in Quebec and all across the country, and that is why we have invested in the regions. These investments will improve the situation for all industries, but particularly tourism. Those investments will support festivals and programs, and that is why we will continue to work with our colleagues and other stakeholders to try to find solutions to improve the situation. Mr. Blanchet-Joncat. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure I understood the plan. I'm sure that people in tourism haven't understood it because they're still waiting to hear what it is. We had asked, when it comes to overhead, that some of the wage subsidy be earmarked for overhead. The government has put in place a commercial rent assistance program. 75% of the commercial rent can be reduced. But how many people have applied for that commercial rent plan? The Honourable Minister, we know that the wage subsidy is very important, and we also know that there are other important things, and that's why we've introduced other measures like our approach with a financing facility. That's very important, and our approach to rents. So a number of our measures go hand in hand in order to deal with this crisis. The Honourable Member, I wanted to know how many people, I wanted a number, how many people have applied for that rent assistance program. We know that it's particularly ineffective for seasonal companies in tourism because you have to be able to show a 70% drop in revenues. It's not really logical when you apply that to the tourism industry. According to the CFIB, only 1 in 10 small business will be able to access this program. Does the government consider that 1 out of 10 companies is an effective program? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I understand the situation. That is why we have come up with other options. $71,000 in support to organizations in rural areas through the Community Development Program. So there are other investments that have been made to help a lot of smaller companies in Quebec, particularly in the tourism industry. There's about 1 minute left. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, in my books, 1 in 10 companies isn't a great record. So what's the government waiting for? Are they going to put in place a broadened program that will support more tourism companies and more seasonal industries? The Honourable Minister of Science. Mr. Speaker, we do have a strategy. We have invested in regional development. We have invested in small and medium-sized businesses. We have supported workers. And we will continue to come up with solutions in working together with provincial governments. I am sure that we have to work together, particularly around tourism, because that industry is in a very dire situation. But I am sure that we can find solutions that will help and improve the situation for tourism.
With Mr. Van Bynen, Newmarket, Aurora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to inform you that I will be splitting my time with the member from Kingston and the Islands. Mr. Speaker, last week was Mental Health Week, and we know that COVID-19 pandemic has caused a great deal of stress and uncertainty for all Canadians, and that during this uncertain time, it is normal for many people to feel increased anxiety, depression, and mental health issues. And in fact, a poll by the Canadian Mental Health Association's Ontario branch showed that 61% of respondents were worried about the mental health of a loved one, and more than half of the respondents were worried about their own mental health. In the Standing Committee for Health, we've also heard from many witnesses that our frontline heroes working around the clock to protect from the virus and to help others recover are at great risk of physical and mental burnout. Mr. Speaker, this shows how seriously Canadians need supports for their mental health and well-being during this most trying time. Can the Minister of Health tell my constituents what the government is doing to support Canadians during this uncertain time?
Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Newmarket Aurora for that very insightful question. And in fact, we've been very worried about Canadians' mental health and as it's resulting from the pandemic, but even prior to that. And we knew that we needed to create rapidly more tools for Canadians across the country, no matter where they live. We've worked very closely with our provincial and territorial partners, for example, to help amplify the work that they're doing through increased supports, financial supports. But we also launched Wellness Together Canada, which is a digital portal, Mr. Speaker, where all Canadians can get access to tools that they can use to help with the circumstances they find themselves in, to get the information they need during COVID-19. It also allows, Mr. Speaker, for Canadians to connect to paid professionals who can provide support in a variety of different ways, whether it's over the telephone, through email or text, so understanding that many Canadians have different ways of connecting that work for them. We've also partnered, Mr. Speaker, with a number of organizations who provide supports to Canadians, many of the crisis hotlines, for example, that are working double time, triple time to try and keep up with the volume of demand. This is a difficult time for all Canadians, and we will continue to work to ensure Canadians have the supports they need.
We'll go to Mr. Gerritsen, Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Students from across the country have been significantly impacted by the effects of COVID-19. As we know, thousands of post-secondary students depend on employment throughout the summer in order to pay for expenses throughout their academic year. Unfortunately, the pandemic has resulted in the closure of many businesses and organizations that would normally employ students who work during the summer. Thousands of students are now left without the financial means that they were depending on for which to pay for their post-secondary educational expenses. In response to the concerns raised by students, the government announced the creation of the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, which will provide students with the assistance they need to make it through these uncertain financial times. I represent a riding, Mr. Speaker, that has multiple post-secondary institutions, and my constituents have been asking when they should expect to apply for the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Can the President of the Treasury Board please update the House on the status of the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, and in particular, when students will be able to start accessing this benefit, and confirm if and how it may be retroactive?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would first like to thank the member for Kingston and the Islands for his strong advocacy in favour of young Canadians in his riding and across Canada. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to ensuring that young Canadians have the support they need during this very difficult time. That's why we are investing $9 billion to support them, students and recent graduates affected by COVID-19. Measures include doubling the Canada Student Grants, raising the cap on student loans, creating new employment opportunities for students, and launching the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. I'm pleased to share with the House that the application period for the Canada Emergency Student Benefit will commence on May the 15th, that is, this Friday. This benefit will provide $1,250 a month to eligible students, or $2,000 for students that have disabilities or dependents. When Canada, Mr. Speaker, emerges from this pandemic, we want to make sure that they are in a financial position to continue their studies so they can pursue fruitful careers and help build a strong Canada.
Before the next 5-minute period, we will take a break so that console staff can change places.
Okay. We'll next go to the honourable member for Calgary Skyview, Ms. Sahuta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Victims of human trafficking continue to suffer during this crisis. Many are facing worse conditions and additional barriers to escaping human trafficking than before the pandemic. The government has been completely silent on this issue, and now funding to fight human trafficking is being taken away from frontline organizations. Why would the government choose to do this at this vulnerable time?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Human trafficking, as we all know, is one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. Our government is working to eliminate all instances of it. To combat human trafficking, we've launched a comprehensive national strategy to combat human trafficking that brings together federal efforts under one strategic framework. We have backed that move with $75 million additional investments. The new strategy now strengthens Canada's ability to fight this abhorrent attack on human rights and human dignity.
Back to Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Chair, this simply isn't good enough. The government is letting down our most vulnerable Canadians. We know that human trafficking hasn't stopped during this pandemic. And these frontline organizations have received the message that supporting them in fighting these heinous crimes is not a priority. What is the minister going to do to rectify this?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as I've said, we have developed a national strategy to combat human trafficking. We've made $75 million in additional investments, and this new strategy takes a whole-of-government approach. It empowers victims and survivors to regain their self-confidence and control over their lives. It will prevent more of these crimes from taking place. It provides better protection and support for the most vulnerable to human trafficking, and it will ensure that police and prosecutors have the resources to prosecute these traffickers for their heinous crimes. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to work collaboratively with victims groups and provide the supports that are required.
And Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Chair, more vulnerable Canadians continue to be let down. There are effective medications that have been developed for those living with cystic fibrosis. Yet that medication is not available here. We know that the pharmaceutical company has not been able to apply to market this drug in Canada because of the changes to PMPRB, which has been heavily criticized by stakeholders and patients. Will the minister delay the July 1st implementation date and review the regulations so drugs like Trikafta are made available in Canada?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there are two separate issues in that question, so I will talk about the PMPRB. We're committed, as you know, as a government to increasing affordability and accessibility to Canadian medications across Canada, and the PMPRB regulatory amendments will help Canadians be able to afford their prescriptions. Canada will continue to be an important market for new medicines. In fact, many countries with much lower medicine prices gain access to new medicines in the same time frame or even faster than Canada.
Ms. Sahota.
Mr. Chair, those living with a rare disease, every single day can be a struggle. We know the importance of lowering drug costs, but not at the cost of having life-saving drugs available here in Canada. Waiting years for the government to reduce regulations is not an option. We also know that the nature of the disease makes those more susceptible to contracting COVID-19 and at a higher risk of it being lethal. Why is this government continuing to let those with CF struggle and suffer needlessly?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe the member opposite is talking about the drug Trikafta, which many cystic fibrosis patient groups have been advocating for access to in Canada. In fact, the manufacturer of Trikafta has not submitted an application to market this product in Canada. But however, saying that, we do have a special access program, Mr. Speaker, for drugs that are not marketed in Canada. And as of May 6, Health Canada has approved 95 applications for 98 patients to access Trikafta through this special access program. I would encourage all patients with cystic fibrosis to speak to their doctor to ensure that they too can apply through the special access program.
Time for just one short question, 45 seconds.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we know the importance of lowering drug costs. As you know, 4,300 people suffer from this rare genetic disease. Most of them are children and young adults. One young woman from Calgary who is a CF champion is fighting for her passion of being a famous opera singer. She's very talented, but her reality with living with CF meant she had many visits to the hospital and had many health crises, which made singing impossible for a time. CF patients are waiting for this drug. That was fast-tracked in other countries, and now it seems that the changes to PMPRB will cause further delays or complications. Will the minister delay the implementation and review the PMPRB?
The Honourable Minister, a short response, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'll just repeat that the manufacturer has not applied to sell this drug in Canada.
Now we'll go to Mr. Lobb, Huron Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On July 25th, 2019, after the federal, provincial, territory ag meeting, the ag minister promised big changes in 2020 for programs like ag stability and ag recovery. Besides a pilot program in a couple provinces and an application deadline, is there anything else you'd like to report?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Alors,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since our meeting in Quebec with agriculture ministers in July, we've been working on improving the agri-stability program. That was in my mandate letter. We're going now we're dealing with emergency programs that go beyond what those ongoing programs provide for.
You can appreciate, Minister, the issue we're dealing with here. There's been $19 billion the United States Department of Agriculture has allocated to farmers, $16 billion of that in direct support. The program that was offered last week was a mere fraction of what the United States is getting, $252 million. If the minister is telling farmers to bank on the existing business risk management program, it's not going to work. There are countless number of pork farmers, just in my riding alone, that have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 headed hogs that are ready to be shipped within the near future, and they're going to lose $70 a head. Agri-stability isn't going to cut it. We need an immediate program to help these hardworking pork farmers out.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand full well what my colleague is talking about, and that is why we've come up with a specific program, $67 million for processors, $50 million for beef, and also for pork producers. And we've also worked to improve access to agri-stability. And I have a producer who used their calculator and said that they would get $11 a head for pork under this new program, whereas the Alberta minister said that people could get up to $20 per head using agri-stability.
With the math, the minister just said one of her pork producers is going to get 11. They're losing 70, so there's a $59 per head gap times likely several thousand head of hogs in their barns. Let's go to another trying issue with agriculture. It's the carbon tax. I know the government has their position on the carbon tax, and I know I'm not going to change it. But I want to give the members of Parliament across the way, the government, an idea of what a pork farmer might go through. A pork farmer sent me their bill for February 26th to March 24th. Their natural gas bill was about $2,400. In there was close to $500 on federal carbon tax. Farmers manage their woodlots ethically. They have environmental farm plans. They have nutrient management plans. They get no credit for any of the carbon sequestration and ethical environmental management on their farm, yet every month they're asked to pay a carbon tax. It just doesn't seem fair. I want the minister's opinion on that.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our policy of putting a price on pollution was designed to create a cleaner economy, but there are exemptions for agricultural producers. For certain things are not taxed, and fuel delivered off farm are not taxed. And also there's a partial refund for propane and natural gas used in greenhouses. So as you can see, Mr. Speaker, a lot of efforts have been made to increase our producers to use business risk management programs, and we're willing to go ahead with that approach.
Go ahead, Mr.
Look,
Bob.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Minister of Agriculture has toured my riding. She knows very well what the lay of the land is there. What she failed to mention is, what about pork farmers? What about chicken farmers? What about hens? What about drying for the fall? All those farmers pay a carbon tax, and there is no program for them. They pay, and they pay. And what makes it worse is you give them no credit for the environmental work they do on their farms.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's true that our producers are making amazing efforts to protect the environment and the well-being of their livestock, and that's important. But I'd like to put things in context.
AAFC Agriculture Canada used data from Agricultural Tax Data Program to show the impacts on a per-farm basis as a percentage of total operating costs. The estimates ranged from $210 to $819 per farm, and 0.05% to 0.42% of total farm operating expenses.
And now we will proceed to Mr. Lehoux, the honourable member for Beauce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a rural area, people are resourceful and resilient. Instead of staying cooped up in their homes, they are reinventing themselves and trying to save the companies they've built. One of the only options they have is telework. Unfortunately, they don't have access to the tools they need. Cell networks and internet are deficient if they exist at all. I'm not asking if, but when are you going to help these Canadians come into the 21st century? Can you give us any guarantees and a timetable for deployment and an actual plan? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague. The situation is very dire. High-speed internet access is not a luxury, it's essential, and that is why we have come up with a program to connect people. And there will be another strategy forthcoming to improve the situation for all regions, particularly rural regions. It's absolutely essential that we find a solution. Mr. Lehoux. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think my question was fully understood. The government promised in Budget 2019 that all Canadians would be hooked up by 2030. This is 2020. That's 10 years from now. People don't need adequate internet service 10 years from now. They need it now. And we have a very specific problem with the pandemic. So I want to know a date. I want a date. The Honourable Minister of Science. Mr. Speaker, in the latest budget, we presented a $1 billion program for high speed, a $7 billion program. That's a lot of money for high-speed internet. My colleague who's responsible for the program. We also have a Connected to Innovate, which helped hundreds of communities all across Canada. We will continue to work to improve the situation for people living in rural areas. And we will come up with solutions for high-speed internet access. Mr. Lehoux. Mr. Speaker, as you know, the Beauce is the SME heartland. On March 27th, the Prime Minister launched the emergency wage subsidy to help companies deal with the pandemic. Unfortunately, partners in partnerships have been left out. One of my constituents, among many others, has called me 3 times since mid-April. And I haven't been able to give that constituent any answers because the government is dragging its heels. We'd like to have a clear, specific answer. Same thing for sole proprietors. They've been forgotten. When is the government going to include this type of business in their support programs? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have provided support to small and medium-sized businesses that are not eligible for other supports that have already been implemented. We have $71 billion in support for organizations and businesses in rural areas and to help with cash flow problems. We've also invested in programs for rural areas. We are going to continue to invest to support small and medium-sized businesses. Mr. Lehoux, there's just time for a short question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Canadian Federation of Agriculture asked the federal government to come up with an urgent support fund. $2.6 billion is the price they put on it to support food safety in Canada in response to COVID-19. Can the minister respond to the Federation's request? We'd like a date. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We already have a whole host of business risk management programs. Those are funded to the tune of $1.6 billion, and we've freed up even more monies. We're willing to do more. We're willing to go beyond all of that. I would encourage producers to apply to agri-stability and agri-investment because that's another $2.3 billion that's available right there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Langley Aldergrove, Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Chair, the government's wage subsidy program is designed to help traditional companies, not high growth companies. For example, I was talking to Ron, who operates a engineering firm in my riding, which specializes in designing and building very expensive machines for their ever-expanding overseas markets. Business is down, but not by the requisite 30%. Of course not. They're in high growth mode. But just recently, they had to lay off some very talented staff. Can the minister confirm that the wage subsidy program can be expanded or adapted to deal with high growth companies who will play such a key role in Canada's economic relaunch?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation and Science.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question, and he is absolutely correct. We as a government take enormous pride in our small businesses, particularly the startups and the high growth firms. They're going to be absolutely essential for our economic recovery, and we know that some of them are ineligible for the wage subsidy. That is why we introduced a $250 million program through the Industrial Research Assistance Plan program through the National Research Council, strictly targeting and focusing those high growth firms that were ineligible for the wage subsidy so they can provide the wage support to keep those highly skilled individuals in Canada.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Chair, there's another category of businesses that are falling through the cracks and that I feel they are being left behind by the wage subsidy program, and that is recently merged companies. For example, there's a trucking company in my riding that is significantly bigger this year than they were last year due to some key acquisitions and mergers late last year. Each of the legacy companies by themselves would qualify for the wage subsidy, but the merged company does not. So can the minister confirm that the wage subsidy program is sufficiently flexible to accommodate recently merged companies?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, I want to thank my honourable colleague for his question. He's identifying unique pain points that exist within the overall economy for specific examples of companies that are not able to access some of the programming that we've provided. I do want to highlight when it comes to the wage subsidy, we have made changes to the revenue thresholds to make more companies eligible, and the specific example the member opposite raises is something that's under consideration.
Mr. Van Popta.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the government's commercial rent assistance program discriminates against certain tenants based solely on whether their landlord has a mortgage on the subject building. I was talking to Leslie the other day, who manages a number of commercial office buildings in my riding. Some of these buildings have mortgages, some don't, all depending on what they're able to negotiate with their banker. Now, Leslie is having a very hard time explaining to her tenants why some will qualify for the rental subsidy and some won't, depending on which building they are in. So can the government confirm that the nonsensical mortgage requirement in the rental subsidy program is gone?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the approach was taken on trying to assist businesses, small businesses with rent is very much based on the fact that this is a provincial jurisdiction. So we have used the mortgage system as a way to do it, so it is in fact not nonsensical. That said, we are looking at this particular issue. It's something that is under consideration. We expect that we will find a way to ensure that those landlords that don't have mortgages can work with the CMHC to have the appropriate approach to be eligible for this program.
Got about 1 minute left. Mr. Van Popta, go ahead. Short question.
Good. We'll switch gears. Many people in my riding have reached out to me quite disturbed that their favorite hunting and sports shooting firearms are now on the banned list. Can the minister inform Canadians how much Canadian taxpayer dollars are going to go to the buyback program from legal gun owners and how far that money would go if it were to be diverted to something useful, like more border controls to stop illegal importation of firearms.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
And Mr. Speaker, our first priority is the protection and the safety of Canadians, and we've seen an unacceptable rise in gun violence right across our community. And there are weapons, all weapons are naturally being regulated in our country. Some represent such a significant risk, such as handguns, that we strongly restrict them. And some weapons, quite frankly, are completely unsuitable for any sporting or hunting activity, such as weapons designed for soldiers to engage in combat with other soldiers. We have now prohibited those weapons. And the saving of lives is worth an investment in public safety. But I want to assure the member, we will bring forward legislation that will facilitate an appropriate buyback program, and I look forward to a discussion in this House with the member opposite on how that can be done to ensure public safety and to ensure that we do it in as effective way as possible.
Okay, we'll now go to Mr. Manley, Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to thank the government and the ministers present for the rapid relief that they've provided to Canadians. And I know that the constituents in my riding really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank them also for being responsive to the MPs who've brought forward gaps in the program. Mr. Speaker, the CERB requirements recognize dividend income for eligibility for the Canada Emergency Business Account. But the Canada Emergency Business Account does not recognize dividends or contract payments. I've been contacted by many small business owners who've been legally paying themselves with dividends for years, but these companies cannot apply for the CEBA, even though this might save them from bankruptcy during this crisis. Will the government make the necessary changes to allow dividend income to be admissible for the CEBA eligibility?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation and Science.
I'd like to thank the honourable colleague for his very thoughtful question and his advocacy in looking at different solutions and working with us to help small businesses, not only in his riding, but across the country as well. He's absolutely correct that the Canada Emergency Business Account has been successful. 590,000 loans have been issued, and that's a reflection of some of the changes that we had introduced, which made the criteria more generous so more businesses could obtain this assistance. He's raised the issues of dividends. As I've said before, we continue to work with Canadians and Canadian businesses and colleagues in this House to see how we can assist more Canadians, not less, and we'll continue to endeavour to do that.
And back to Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are still many Canadians stranded overseas who are trying to return to Canada, but some have no assurance that their non-Canadian citizen spouses will be allowed into Canada with them. Many are being forced to make an impossible choice between sheltering in place overseas or separating from their spouse in order to return home. Will the government remove unnecessary barriers and allow these Canadians to return to Canada immediately with their spouses?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to take the opportunity through you to thank the member for a very important question. In an effort to flatten the curve and to protect Canadians, we've taken a number of extraordinary measures at the border, and we have restricted non-essential travel of people coming into the Canadian border. And while Canadian citizens and permanent residents will always be admissible and, of course, subject to a 14-day quarantine upon entry, foreign nationals are subject to travel restrictions. And for an individual to be eligible to travel to Canada, their travel must be considered essential travel consistent with the emergency order put in place. Now, I recognize and very much respect the spirit of the member's question, and we recognize these are difficult situations. It is not our desire to keep families apart. I want to assure him that each situation will be decided on a case-by-case basis based on the information made available to Border Service officers, and welcome any inquiries he may have. Reach out to my office and we'll help in every way we can.
Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Alberta Energy Regulator has suspended a wide range of environmental monitoring requirements for oil sands companies during this pandemic. This includes suspending environmental reporting, wetland, wildlife, and bird monitoring, even though Canada is a signatory to the International Migratory Bird Treaty. Water that escapes from storm ponds doesn't need to be tested. Air quality programs, including for First Nations communities, has been reduced. Testing for leaks of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, has been suspended. This after the federal government has provided $750 million in funding for methane emission reductions. The federal government has also just committed $1.7 billion to clean up orphaned oil wells. That mess is clearly the negligence of the Alberta government and is something that corporations should be paying for. Will the federal government hold the Alberta government to account and withhold energy sector relief funding until these environmental regulations are reinstated?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question and for his very collaborative approach with our government on a number of issues. And I would like to thank him for this particular question and his particular reference to methane, because it gives me an opportunity to highlight some very important progress that the federal government made this week working with the province of Alberta. Just yesterday, Alberta joined BC and Saskatchewan and published its own draft regulations on methane. This will allow us, working with Alberta, to work on equivalency on methane, which will allow us to work towards standing down the federal system in those jurisdictions. This is tremendously important because it will allow us to cut methane emissions by 45% by 2025. Hugely important for fighting climate change together.
And I will go to the Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain, Mr. Duval.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to hear from yesterday's announcement on the seniors about extending the tax deadline to October 1st. After many discussions with the Minister of Seniors, I was glad to hear that she was listening to us, the NDP, and many others on making this happen, because it stops a lot of interruption for people that couldn't get their taxes done. But, Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has been showing us in stark terms that Canadian seniors are struggling to make ends meet in Canada. Before and during the crisis, it is clear OAS and GIS benefits levels are just not enough for seniors to keep up with the cost of living. So we need to fix this now. So why is the government refusing to increase OAS and GIS benefits to lift seniors out of poverty on a permanent basis?
The Honourable Minister for Seniors.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for giving me this opportunity to rise today and talk about Canadian seniors that we're supporting during this pandemic. Many Canadian seniors are facing significant health, economic and social challenges due to the pandemic. They built this country, and now they need our help. Our government is taking significant action to provide Canadian seniors with greater financial security and give them the help they need during this crisis. We're building on past measures delivered by introducing a one-time tax-free payment for those who receive OAS of $300 and GIS of $200, totaling $500 to seniors who receive both. We are also supporting community-based projects to improve the quality of life for seniors through the New Horizons for Seniors program, and investing in other charities. Seniors need our help, and we are delivering for them.
Duval.
Mr. Speaker, so I was glad to hear that the Minister of Seniors is acknowledging the financial burden that our seniors are taking by when she mentioned about the dispensing the prescription fees, the added cost of the groceries, delivery charges, and I was glad to acknowledge that the Prime Minister acknowledged what the heavy toll on seniors are facing, and that they helped to shape this country and then they need our help. But yesterday, a surprising statement that I heard, Mr. Speaker, is that the Treasury Board and the Seniors Minister admitted in their press briefing yesterday that the level of assistance being provided to Canadian seniors is quite low. So I asked the Seniors Minister, why is she acknowledging all the burden that they're trying to help the seniors, but the response they're giving is not going to be, is just a very, very low way of handling it?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I really do want to acknowledge my honourable colleague for his advocacy. I just want to assure him, while the government remains committed to implementing policies in our platform, we are focused on this health crisis right now. We have provided financial support to seniors sooner through the GST credit top-up, and now additional payments through OAS to the OAS and GIS recipients. This year, we are investing over twice as much on financial assistance for seniors as we committed to in our platform. That is $3.8 billion compared to $1.56 billion in the platform. Seniors need our help, and we're delivering. These payments have provided greater support for the most vulnerable seniors. And just to give some details, for those on OAS and GIS, they will get, in conjunction with the GST credit top-up, $875 per adult and over $1,500 per couple. This is not an insignificant amount. This is a significant amount to support our seniors during this pandemic. Thank you.
We have about 1 minute left for both a question and response. Go ahead, Mr. Duvall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But there's many of those, as the minister is talking about being the maximum payments, if it's possible. What I've heard from seniors, this is a one-shot deal, and it's an insult to them, and they want some stability on an ongoing basis. But I ask that we did make an agreement about 2 weeks ago on this, that it would be implemented without delay on the seniors' issue of how we can help them out and people with disabilities. Why has yesterday's announcement included only the people on our seniors, but not with people with disabilities? Why have they been omitted, and when can they expect help to come?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors.
Thank you very much. I just want to touch on the 2 points raised. On the one-time payment, we know the seniors need the help now, and that's why it's important to help getting that money into seniors' account as soon as possible, and that's why we're providing the one payment right away instead of small amounts spread over months, and it will be in the coming weeks. We are also looking at additional supports that we need to support other vulnerable Canadians. So I just wanted to let him know that we are working on additional measures. Thank you.
Well, now, the time is, we're 5 minutes are finished. And
now we're going to move to Ms. Gill, the Honourable Member for Magny-Quagan. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to say that I'm going to share my time with the member for Rimouski, Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. I have a question that I'm going to ask for the 4th time today. When I'll go back home, I'll need to talk about people for Demqui, Chandler, Saint-Emilion, from Tadoussac, people from Harrington Harbour. What will I tell them? Will I tell them that the government will support the Bloc's proposal so that seasonal workers, regardless of whether they have the CERB or the number of the hours they have accumulated, so that they can be qualified for EI until the end of the next season? Or should I tell them no? The Liberal government has not planned anything for them as they go through this crisis. They haven't been able to fill the black hole in EI, and they're just digging it further. It'll be a 6th or 8th month black hole, and this means that these people will have nothing to put on their tables over the upcoming year. I'd like to hear an answer to my question. Thank you. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board, thank you very much. And to answer my colleague's important question, I'd like to say 3 things. First, we have understood what she said. Seasonal, it's the nature of this business that is seasonal, not these workers. The work they do is fundamental to their families and also to their communities in the regions, notably in eastern Quebec. Second, the CERB has a sizable impact for these workers that are also often vulnerable, and in most cases, they would like to work and they can't find a job. And third, in terms of longer-term investment, EI, people who benefit from EI, who would normally receive EI but have lost this in recent week, in terms of seasonal workers, they are eligible for the CERB. Nevertheless, we're going to look to the future and to extraordinarily important measures we've already announced, and we're going to continue to announce. We're going to support tourism, agriculture, fishing, forestry, and many other sectors that are important with respect to regional development in Quebec and elsewhere. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet. Chair, that's not reassuring for people in Quebec, as my honourable colleague had just said earlier. The commercial rent program is a failure, according to the Independent Business Association, because 1 out of every 3 companies is not eligible. And it means that their landlords won't participate in the program. Why? Because landlords have the choice to whether they want to participate in the program or not. And how that will help companies. How will that help them? We're wondering. Companies, notably seasonal ones, need help covering their fixed costs. Can the government agree to amending this overly restrictive program to allow companies to cover more of their fixed costs, particularly seasonal companies? The Honourable Minister of Finance. We know that fixed costs are very important for companies, and our program with respect to commercial rent is very important. We haven't yet announced all the details. It's still too early to say that this program is facing challenges, but in coming days we'll have more details, and we all hope that we'll be in a good position to cover fixed costs and rent. Thank you. 1 minute left. Yes, I hope there'll be adjustments because many companies will need this program, and it'll be unacceptable for them not to be eligible. So we have to make amendments for companies and establish. We have to look at prevention plans, training, necessary equipment. It costs money to implement all this to protect Canadians, and people want to be able to return to these companies. Can this government to committing to supporting these companies, notably in the tourism industry, to establish health measures? Answer: I understand the situation we're in. It's very serious in rural regions, and that is why we've set aside $71 million for companies and municipalities. And we're doing 2 things to help many companies in rural regions, and I am certain that we'll be able to continue to work together to find other solutions as well. Thank you.
On to the honourable member for Calgary Centre, Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the terms of accessing the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, known as CECRA, is that you must have a mortgage on the property. So one of the key terms of eligibility for this support is that the landlord owes money to a bank. Will the Minister of Finance tell us if this program was designed for the benefit of landlords and tenants or for the benefit of banks?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I appreciate the question from the member opposite. I think it's important to know that commercial rent, landlord-tenant relationships are provincial jurisdictions. And therefore, as we embarked on an approach that could enable landlords and tenants to get to an agreement that would help both, we used the CMHC as a vehicle from which we could do that. So we think that we've come up with a program that provides advantages for the landlords and advantages for the tenants, and we will be announcing details that will include how mortgages can be put in place for those landlords that don't currently have them.
Mr. McLean.
Brookfield Properties, a large Canadian firm, announced that its rent collection on commercial properties for April were 15% of the lease terms. Luckily, Brookfield has another company, Brookfield Business Partners, poised to help by buying up the distressed equity of the firms that owe them money. Did the Minister of Finance design CECRA with this outcome in mind, to wash out individual investors and small companies and transfer that value into the hands of vulture financiers that hold all the cards?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, we designed this program exactly with the idea in mind and the challenge that we're seeing. We're seeing that in many cases, commercial tenants, are not actually able to pay their rent. So landlords are not getting the rent that's due. Therefore, there's a mutual interest from tenants and from landlords in coming to an agreement. By providing funding through the mortgage system to those landlords, we recognize that we will enable both of those 2 parts of the the equation, to come to an agreement that we think will be advantageous for the sector over the long term.
Mr. McLean.
In the past 2 months, the Bank of Canada has tripled the size of its balance sheet. to almost $400 billion. And more to come, Mr. Speaker. In the 2008 recession, the world's major economies endured quantitative easing, a previously unknown scale, most of which has not since been unwound. Canada endured a then record $50 billion deficit, but we did not need to enter the uncertain world of QE as a result of the strength of Canada's oil and gas industry. Will the minister acknowledge that this government's oil and gas policy mismanagement has led to the economic decline, necessitating hundreds of billions of dollars of quantitative easing?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me challenge one assumption implicit in the honourable member's question, and that is that our government fails to understand the importance of the oil and gas sector to our economy. And let me quote some leaders from Alberta and their response to the LEAF program. Tim McMillan, CEO of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, said, and I quote, "I think this is essential. Not all companies are going to need to tap into this sort of liquidity, but some that are normally high-quality, stable companies likely will be looking for this program to provide a certain amount of liquidity for them." CAP understands that we are supporting Canadian companies, including in the oil and gas sector. I would urge the members opposite to understand that as well.
Go ahead, Mr. McLean.
BlackRock is one of the world's largest investment companies, managing trillions of dollars of bonds. It has lobbied regulators around the world to not be named a systemically important financial institution. The Bank of Canada unexpectedly engaged BlackRock as an advisor on its bond buying plans. Is the Minister of Finance mindful of the conflict of interest that exists between the world's largest bond manager, BlackRock, and the advice it's giving the Bank of Canada on buying bonds?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite might know that the Bank of Canada is independent from the government, and as such, we are not privy to those decisions and support the continuing independence of the Bank of Canada from the government.
Just a short question, Mr. McLean.
Question. The finance sector seems to be getting well served during this economic crisis. Will the minister endeavour to provide a more balanced program of benefits going forward for the sake of the entire Canadian economy and not just the Brookfields, the BlackRocks, and the big banks?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I think the notion that one sector is being advantaged versus another actually defies the facts. More than 550,000 loans have gone out to small businesses, 40,000 loans per business in this country over a very short time period. Canada is a leader in this regard and will continue to be supporting businesses all across Canada with loans and support as they need it to get ourselves through this difficult time.
Now we'll go to the last 5-minute round. The Honourable Member for Carleton, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is the dollar value of the total assets of the Government of Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today we were given incorrect information on the Auditor General, which I'd like to be able to provide more information at my next response.
Poilievre.
What is the total dollar value of the assets of the Government of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
The member from Carleton said that the previous government spent more on the Auditor General than the current government, and that is actually incorrect.
Yeah.
What is the total dollar value of the assets of the Government of Canada?
Minister.
In fact, the last full year of the Harper government, 14-15, the total spending on the Auditor General was $85.8 million.
Mr. Poilievre.
And the dollar value of the assets of the Government of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the most recent year, 18-19, the total spend was $92.4 million for the Auditor General, showing a 7.7% increase.
Mr. Poilievre.
And what are the total liabilities of the Government of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, I would just say it's shocking when people bring forward information that is actually incorrect to the House to try and make a point.
Mr. Poilievre.
The total liabilities of the Government of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will continue to support Canadians through this time with support not only for businesses but for individuals to get through and get a bridge to a better time.
Poilievre.
Just the dollar value.
The Honourable Minister.
And that's a continuing commitment, Mr. Speaker.
I know we shouldn't ask the minister about numbers. He's just the finance minister, after all. But what is the equity of the government of Canada's on the government of Canada's balance sheet?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would advise the member of Carleton to memorize those Auditor General figures for his next foray into the House of Commons.
The Honourable Mr. Poilievre.
So the minister has claimed that our balance sheet is strong. There are three components to a balance sheet: the assets, the liabilities, and the equity. And the minister doesn't know any of the three. So clearly he doesn't actually know anything about our balance sheet. That's reassuring. Now, according to the Auditor General, the negative net worth of our government of Canada will be as much as $1 trillion by the end of this fiscal year. Can the minister, if he's familiar with any of these numbers, tell us, is it possible his government will hit $1 trillion of debt this year?
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to assure Canadians that our approach will be to continue to make investments on their behalf, and that is available to us because of our strong fiscal position, but we will continue to take that approach, which we think is the appropriate approach.
Absolutely. Poilievre.
$1 trillion, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, we will continue to focus on the importance of supporting Canadians.
Mr. Poilievre.
What is the size of our current national debt?
The Honourable Minister.
And Mr. Speaker, I think that what will happen as we do that is we will allow ourselves to have a stronger economy at the end because of these investments.
Poilievre.
The size of the national debt?
The Honourable Minister.
And we have always seen, Mr. Speaker, that these investments, they're not only supporting Canadians, they're supporting businesses so that we do have a strong economy and a strong fiscal position coming out of this position.
Mr. Poilievre.
Does the Finance Minister know the size of our national debt?
The Honourable Minister.
The interpreters. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to focus our efforts as we believe we should focus them on supporting Canadians through this time.
Mr. Poilievre.
Does the Finance Minister know what $1 trillion is?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to make investments that we believe are prudent in the face of this economic challenge, supporting Canadians as we know we need to.
Mr. Poilievre.
What is the total dollar value of all the public and private debt in Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know that by supporting Canadians, by investments, that we will enable Canadians to have less debt themselves, because that's
correct. Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. What is the total debt, public and private, as a share of GDP in Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the important consideration here is that the federal government is taking a position that we should support Canadians so that they don't take on the debt themselves.
That's right.
We have last intervention.
And yet they have record household debt, record corporate debt, and growing government debt. The Finance Minister doesn't seem to know any of the basic numbers you would be required to govern the finances of the Government of Canada. So I will give him one last chance. What is, based on his latest briefings, the total size of Canada's national debt? If he doesn't know, can he have the humility and honesty just to say so?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for slightly more time in this response and to say that we think that the best thing to do during this time period is to invest in Canadians. Right. We know that in that way they will not be supporting as much debt themselves. The government's in a fiscal position where we are taking on debt at this time, which we think is appropriate to get our economy to better position at the end of this crisis. We think that's appropriate. We'll continue to take that approach.
Bravo, Bill.
The Honourable Government House Leader, on a point of order.
Simplement sur un point d'ordre, Monsieur.
On a point of order, I'd like us to pay attention to the interpreters' work, and that should be taken into account when questions are firing back and forth rapidly like that. It's difficult for the interpreters to keep up, so I would ask to have that taken into consideration. Thank you. I'm not sure that's a point of order, but it's certainly a good recommendation to the House. We should take into account working conditions for the interpreters.
We have our questions to ministers for this afternoon. Just to note to honourable members that pursuant to an order made on April 20th, the House has been recalled. As such, the committee will now adjourn and the House sitting will begin shortly thereafter. The bells will be rung to call in members, and a parade will begin the sitting. This committee is now adjourned.